chums, there's lots and lots and lots of stories out at the moment regarding, of course, the late and, in my opinion, brilliant Queen Elizabeth. Of course, while we're all celebrating what would have been her 100th birthday, what was really interesting was, of course, the stories emerging about what happened over the last 5-6 years, etc.
For most of his life, Prince Harry was never just another royal in the eyes of Queen Elizabeth II. He was different, not in rank, not in duty, but in the way she understood him. While others saw a rebellious prince, she saw a young man shaped by loss, by grief, and by a kind of emotional weight that never really leaves you. The death of Diana, Princess of Wales, affected both her sons, but Harry carried it differently. He was more open, more reactive, more vulnerable. And because of that, the Queen was softer with him than she was with most. She gave him room to grow. She gave him time to make mistakes. And most importantly, she gave him protection. For years, that protection defined their relationship. Harry was the exception. A relationship built on understanding. The Queen didn't just tolerate Harry's behavior, she made space for it. When he chose a military path, she supported it, even when it raised eyebrows. When headlines turned against him, she didn't publicly intervene, but she quietly ensured he wasn't pushed too far. She believed structure would help him. She believed purpose would steady him. And for a while, she was right. Harry found identity in service. He found direction in discipline. But beneath all of that, something was always unresolved. Then Meghan entered the picture. When Meghan Markle became part of Harry's life, the royal family didn't collapse overnight. There was no immediate crisis, no dramatic fallout in the beginning. In fact, from the outside, everything looked hopeful, even promising. But inside the palace, something subtle began to shift. At first, it was small. A request here, an expectation there. Nothing unusual until it became a pattern. The problem was never one moment. What many people don't realize is that royal tensions rarely come from a single incident. They build over time, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. And that's exactly what happened here. Requests became frequent, expectations became stronger, and eventually, pressure began to form. The monarchy, by its very nature, does not respond well to pressure. It is built on patience, hierarchy, and an unspoken understanding that nothing is rushed. But this situation was moving fast. Too fast. The inner circle Meghan couldn't enter. In her later years, the Queen's inner circle was small, trusted, and carefully maintained. It included people like Catherine, Princess of Wales, and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh women who had spent years earning their place. They understood the system. They respected the pace. They adapted before they demanded anything. That's why they were trusted. Meghan Markle, however, didn't follow that path. She didn't wait. She didn't ease into the structure. She wanted direct access, immediately. And that's where things began to fracture. Instead of gradually becoming part of the system, expectations were pushed forward. And when those expectations weren't met instantly, they didn't stop. They escalated. But here's where it became complicated. Most of these pressures didn't come directly from Meghan. They came through Harry. Harry became the middle ground and the breaking point. For the Queen, this changed everything. Because now, the grandson she had always protected was no longer simply asking, he was pushing, repeatedly. And that created a tension that had never existed before. This wasn't rebellion. This wasn't independence. This was pressure, coming from someone she had always shielded. Tiara Gate was never about a tiara. To the public, it sounded trivial. A disagreement over a wedding detail. Something small, almost insignificant. But within the palace, it carried a different meaning. It was about tone, about how things were being asked, about how boundaries were being tested. Harry reportedly pushed harder than expected during this moment, and for the first time, it felt like he wasn't operating within the system he had grown up in. He was pushing against it. That was the turning point. Not publicly, not dramatically, but internally, something shifted. The Queen didn't confront him. She didn't argue. She didn't escalate. She simply observed, and she began to step back. Then came the name that changed everything. When Harry and Meghan welcomed their daughter, it should have been a moment of healing for the family. A new beginning. A chance to reconnect. Instead, it became one of the most quietly controversial decisions in recent royal history. They named her Lilibet. To the world, it looked like a tribute, a touching gesture, a deeply personal honor, a sign of love and respect. But inside the palace, the meaning was far more complicated, because Lilibet was not just any name. It was the Queen's private name, a name that belonged only to her closest circle. It came from her childhood, from her father, King George VI, who had used it affectionately when she was young. It was never public. It was never official. It was personal. In a life where everything else, titles, estates, wealth, belonged to the institution, this name was one of the few things that truly belonged to her. And suddenly, it didn't. The question that followed changed everything. Did Harry ask permission? Publicly, it was claimed that he had. That the Queen had agreed. That everything had been done respectfully. But when that claim was challenged, something unexpected happened. The Queen said nothing, no statement, no clarification, no confirmation, just silence. And that silence was the real answer. Because if everything had been exactly as claimed, it would have taken one simple statement to resolve it. One sentence. But she didn't provide it. And in the royal family, silence is never accidental. It is deliberate, it is controlled, and it always means something. For Harry, this was a new reality. All his life, the Queen had protected him. She had stepped in quietly. She had softened situations. She had ensured he was never fully exposed to consequences. But this time, she didn't. She stepped back. And that changed their relationship forever. Because for the first time, Harry stood alone. No quiet intervention. No behind-the-scenes correction. Just distance. This wasn't anger, it was disappointment. The Queen did not express frustration publicly. She didn't create drama. She didn't engage in conflict. But those who understood her knew something important. When she stepped back, it wasn't temporary. The signs were subtle, but clear. Fewer shared public moments. Very limited images together. No strong visual signals of closeness. In a family where every appearance is intentional, those absences matter. The deeper truth behind this story. This wasn't about a tiara. It wasn't about a name. It wasn't even about one decision. It was about a pattern. Repeated pressure. Repeated boundary testing. And a system that does not bend easily. Because the monarchy doesn't react, it adjusts. It doesn't fight publicly. It doesn't argue emotionally. It simply changes position. And sometimes, that position is distance. In her final years, Queen Elizabeth II faced many challenges. Health struggles, public scrutiny, family divisions. But perhaps the most difficult part was something far quieter. The distance from someone she once protected. Harry had always been different to her. Not because he was stronger, but because he needed her more. And for years, she was there. But in the end, even a queen cannot control every path. Even a grandmother cannot fix every relationship. She didn't confront him. She didn't correct him. She didn't expose anything. She simply chose silence. And in the royal family, silence is not empty. It's a decision.